Welcome back, everyone, to Second Opinion with Dr. Dua Hassan. Dr. Dua is a physician at Boston Children's Hospital and a former clinical instructor at the Stanford University School of Medicine. And today we are going to continue our First Day of Life series talking about breastfeeding. Dr. Dua, this is a big one.
Yeah, it's a very big, very important topic because what could be more important than what you feed your baby? And breastfeeding has had a very interesting, let's just say, course in the U.S. in recent years, in recent decades. A patient's mother told me that when she had her daughter, her mother told her that she should give her baby formula because, quote, science found a better way to feed babies. And that actually used to be the recommendation. In the mid 20th century or so, it used to be the recommendation to give your baby formula. Formula was actively promoted. And then we sort of realized several decades ago that actually breast milk was superior to formula. And it was a massive reversal from promoting formula to now promoting breast milk and promoting that breast is best, if you will.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things that I think was top of mind for us as we were having, particularly our first child, and then trying to figure out um, what are we going to do? How are we going to navigate that? Let's talk in particular about the very beginning. When I think about the deliveries of all of our kids, one of the first things that actually happened was getting the baby to mom and letting a baby do its first feed. Why is that important?
Yeah, so that first hour, we call it the golden hour. And I can honestly tell you that after I had my first child via C-section, I did not want to do that golden hour. And so I totally sympathize with moms who you just went through this intense experience who are like, I have to breastfeed my baby now. But there's a lot of benefits to that golden hour. And the golden hour is a combination of skin to skin contact with mom, between mom and baby, and early breastfeeding. From the overall standpoint, babies on mom, it triggers an oxytocin release both in mom and baby, which results in bonding. It's calming for the baby. We want mom to put the baby onto the breast within the first hour, in part because, as anyone who's had a baby will tell you, that very first hour, the babies are most alert. And then over the next few hours, they get to be very, very sleepy. A common call I get is actually like, my baby's, when baby's about 20 hours of life, my baby's really sleepy. Is it okay? And that's very normal. It's very normal for babies to get to be very, very sleepy. And so that first hour is when they're most alert, most likely to latch onto the breast and then start sucking. And that's important because that essentially stimulates prolactin, which is the hormone that allows moms to create breast milk. So it stimulates the receptors, the prolactin receptors in the brain, which helps sort of establish breast milk supply.
Okay, so then the benefits make sense, but as you said, moms are going to have difficulty potentially actually breastfeeding at that point in time. How concerned should someone be if they're not able to?
Yeah. So, at the very beginning, a baby's stomach is very, very small. It's smaller than a walnut. And so they actually don't need very much milk to fill themselves. And so at the very beginning, when moms start to lactate and produce milk, they produce something called colostrum, which we commonly refer to in pediatrics as liquid gold. It's like a golden color. It's very thick and it's full of so many great ingredients for your baby, including it's heavy in fats and it's also heavy in immune factors that babies need. And so just a few drops of colostrum, which the majority of women who've just delivered are able to produce, that is enough to not only satiate your baby, but to give them all of those benefits. Before I had kids, I used to tell moms, it's very simple to say, just breastfeed your baby every 2 to 3 hours. And then once I had kids, I was like, oh my goodness, breastfeeding my baby every 2 to 3 hours? That's crazy. And so I totally sympathize with moms who struggle to breastfeed. I would say that the vast majority of women are able to successfully breastfeed if they have the right environment. And that includes factors on the baby's side and also factors on the mom's side. So I usually counsel patients, and I for those early pediatrics visits, I love when mom and dad, if dad, mom and partner, if there's a partner helping, to also come to the visits, because I think it's really important for partner to support mom in order for her to successfully breastfeed. And that includes making sure mom has a robust and well-balanced diet, making sure that mom is getting sleep, which is really tough with a newborn, because things that really make it tough to breastfeed and to produce milk are if you don't have a good diet, if you're really, really stressed, and if you're not getting enough sleep. So basically the things that happen when you first have a baby. And so it's really
Well,
important for the
especially if you're going to
partner.
feed a child every 2 to 3 hours, and if the child takes, like, the babies don't eat instantly. A lot of babies are slow eaters, 15 or 20, maybe even 30 minutes. And then you have to fall back asleep, right? So if you're thinking about 2 hours, you wake up, you have 30 minutes of feeding, it takes you 20 minutes to fall back asleep. You're now asleep for maybe an hour, and the whole cycle starts again.
And so that's why I think it's really helpful for partners to be there, if they're available, to help mom rest and bring water. Hydration is another big thing. If you're breastfeeding, you should be
Mm,
shooting to drink 90 to 100 ounces of water because I mean, you just had a baby, so it's your body needs water, but also you need to have excess water to make breast milk. And so if your body doesn't have enough nutrients for itself, it's going to cut out the breast milk.
mm,
So that's stuff on the mom's end. There are certain factors on the baby's end. The thing that stimulates milk production is actually the emptying of the breast. That's one of the reasons why we tell moms to breastfeed every 2 to 3 hours. And I really like the 3 hour window personally. I find that works best in part because it makes sure that the baby is hungry enough that the next time the baby latches, the baby is drinking all of the breast and the breast is emptying. And that's also where the pump, the breast pump, a very useful device, becomes handy. I often will tell moms who are having trouble breastfeeding, latch the baby on and limit the baby's sucking, if you will, to 15 to 20 minutes aside. Some moms
mm.
will be breastfeeding for an hour at a time. I often tell moms, like, that's just too long. Your baby's sleepy. They're falling, unless you enjoy it, but your baby's sleepy. They're falling asleep on the breast. They're not stimulating the breast. So, I would limit to 15 minutes aside, so a 30-minute session. And then if the baby's still hungry, you can give the baby to dad and you can supplement with formula or express breast milk. And then mom pumps 10 minutes on each side to make sure that the breasts are empty. And even when the breasts are empty, pumping is useful because it's that stimulation
Mm.
that tells your brain, oh my God, my baby's still hungry. I don't have enough milk in my breasts. I need to make more breast milk.
This is one of the other things that I find so amazing about this whole process is that there's this, like, feedback loop of demand so that the mom's supply is being calibrated towards what the baby needs. You mentioned a second ago supplementing with formula. I know prior to us having kids, I kind of thought of it as a binary. You're either breastfeeding or you're doing formula. And then I was a parent and everything got really messy. And I know that there was a little bit of stress for me as we first, we had to supplement at points in order to get our baby just enough calories. How concerned should parents be if they have to supplement a little bit here and there?
I would say that the most important thing is that your baby is fed and that they're growing and developing appropriately. That's by far the most important thing. Whether your baby's breastfed or formula fed, you know, as long as they're growing and feeding, you are lucky, you have a beautiful baby and things are going well. I think that, I've had patients and moms, and I'm recalling a very particular case where a mom was trying to feed her baby and pump literally every 2 hours, and she was like in tears in my office. And I often will tell those moms, take a break. It's okay. It's okay if you give your baby formula. Especially formula these days, a lot of, formula doesn't exactly match breast milk, but a lot of formulas that are commercially available nowadays are basically fortified with fats that we know are important for brain development, for instance. So formula is getting better. As you were saying, James, it's not a binary. If you are able to breastfeed your baby, 20%, 25%, 50%, or 0%, it's okay. Your baby
Yeah.
is going to grow. Formula is totally fine.
This is one of the concepts I learned from our mutual friend Yuri, which is that doing even a little bit of something is better than doing nothing. So if you're not going to work out at all, doing a 15-minute workout is what is infinitely better than not working out at all. And
Yeah,
I,
that's
I think so
absolutely
that
right.
applies here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are some studies that back that up that show that, like, you get a ton of benefits from breastfeeding, even if you just breastfeed 50%.
Do you have any good tips for moms that are, especially first-time moms that are going through this? Because um, I remember watching this with my wife and just being like, there's a lot more mechanics to this than you expect. Like, on one hand, it is natural and the baby knows how to do it, and then on the other hand, like, all of a sudden you have this little wiggly, occasionally crying thing that wants to eat.
So the first thing I would say is breastfeeding is natural, but it is really tough. Saying something
Mhm.
is natural is not the same as saying it's easy. So if
Yeah.
you are struggling with breastfeeding, that is totally normal. I would say, honestly, the majority of first-time moms that I encounter struggle with breastfeeding, myself included. And this was after going to med school, doing pediatric residency, being a pediatrician. It's just really difficult. And so if you're struggling, the first thing I would say is it's okay. We've all been there. It's very common.
Yes.
You're not doing anything wrong. The second thing I would say is that, as I mentioned earlier, breastfeeding is, things on the part of the mom that you can optimize, which I already discussed. But there's also things on the baby side, right? So,
Yes.
is your baby a good latcher? Some babies take a little bit of time, and this is very common. It can take them a few days, maybe even a week, to just figure out the mechanics of latching onto something and sucking in a coordinated manner. So
Yes.
some of it is it just takes the baby time. Some babies
Yes.
just need time, and you just kind of have to be patient and let the baby go at its own pace while using pumping to help stimulate breast milk production on your
Yes.
part. And then I would say my third tip would be that if you are having trouble breastfeeding, schedule a meeting with your pediatrician as soon as possible, because there's a lot
Yes.
of things that we can do on our end to help you have a successful breastfeeding journey, including connecting you with lactation specialists who are
Yes. Yes.
oftentimes former nurses, former postpartum nurses who are really interested in breastfeeding, they have a lot of breastfeeding experience, and they just see moms all day long and help them breastfeed their babies. They will help you learn to latch your baby onto your breasts. They'll oftentimes weigh the baby before and after a breastfeeding session in order to figure out how much milk is being extracted by the baby. So they're extremely useful, and are a great resource. I think if you're a first-time mom and you deliver in a hospital, I would just go ahead and request to have the lactation specialist stop by your room before you leave.
Yeah, I think at North Side, which is where two of our kids were born, the lactation specialist drops by and sees everyone, which would have been really, really useful for our first one.
And that just is a testament to how tough breastfeeding is,
Sure.
that you do need a lot of support. And we talked a lot about why the golden hour is good for the baby, but the golden hour, sort of latching the baby on and trying to get the baby to suck, is also good for mom. It has a
Mm.
lot of benefits for mom, and this is a pediatrics podcast. But from an OBGYN standpoint, it's also very beneficial to mom. One of the things that having the baby stimulate your
Mm.
breasts, part of what that can do is it can stimulate uterine contractions and decrease the
Mm.
risk for hemorrhage after delivery. So
Mm.
it's good for baby and it's good for mom to latch in that first hour, even if
Mm.
you don't end up breastfeeding in the long term.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but is there any things that you see in your practice that we haven't discussed?
So I would say, practically speaking, what do I see? What are the differences that I see between breastfed and formula fed
Uh,
babies? I would say that a lot of I'm going to say some positives and some positive in the breastfeeding direction and some positives in the formula feeding direction. For babies that are exclusively breastfed, I find that they just tolerate breast milk better. All of the studies done on colic say that the rates of colicky babies are equivalent between the two, but I find, just as a practicing pediatrician, that babies who are breastfed tend to digest the milk a little bit better. I feel like parents complain about like their baby being very uncomfortable after feeds just a little bit less, especially as the babies get older. I
yes.
also find that those babies tend to have fewer constipation issues, in part because a breast milk is a natural laxative. So those babies tend to poop more and have fewer issues with constipation. On the
All right.
formula side, formula tends to be a little bit more satiating. And so I find that breastfed babies, again, not all, but I find that on average, they tend to wake up a little bit more at night. A lot of my moms who formula feed their babies, it seems like their babies kind of at an earlier age will sleep like a 4 hour stretch at night because formula sort of fills you up more.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is the actual difference between formula and breast milk at like a chemical level?
Yeah. So if you look at some of the old studies that were done on the differences between the two, I'm thinking of a particular study in the Journal of Pediatrics from 2016. But what they found is that breast milk has neurodevelopmental advantages. Essentially, breast milk has all of these really important fats like DHA that are really important for brain development in babies. And so you'll find a lot of studies that will say that, if you give your baby formula, they're going to be X IQ points higher than sorry, if you give your baby breast milk, they're going to be X IQ points higher than a formula fed baby at age 5, age 7. And
Yes.
so a lot of that is due to the fat composition of breast milk. I will say, or as that data has been coming out, more and more formula manufacturers are trying to include those fats in formula. And so I'd be really curious to see if you're using a fat fortified formula, like, one that I really like is NeuroPro. If you're using that formula in comparison to breast milk, is there as much of a difference? And so that kind of study doesn't exist, but I will say, like, the range of fats available in formula nowadays is a lot more robust. The other big thing that is a difference between the two that formula is certainly not able to reproduce is the immunological benefits of breast milk. So basically, when you breastfeed a baby, the baby gets the mom's immunoglobulins. And so the
Uh,
baby gets IgG, which is an immunoglobulin that allows for long-term immunity, so it protects you
uh,
from various infections. But babies also get something called IgA, which is more important for gut
uh,
formation and helps you build healthy gut microbiome. Those immunological benefits are not something, you can't put someone's IgG into the breast milk. Sorry, into the formula. You can't put someone's IgG into the formula, so it's not something that formula manufacturers are able to reproduce. And the other benefit about breast milk is that when you latch the baby on, it's not just that the baby's getting stuff from mom. Mom is also getting a lot of stuff from baby. So the baby's saliva and stuff is on the nipple. And there's some studies actually that show that some of those actually descend into the breast milk. And
uh,
so mom's body is reacting to the baby's saliva. It's reacting to the pathogens that the baby's exposed to. And so in a way,
wow.
your breast milk is geared for your baby. And as your baby gets older and the composition of their saliva changes, and they mature, the composition of your breast milk changes. So the breast milk is a two-way street between mom and baby, where I guess the chef is,
The
listening to the
original
customer's demands.
personalized, yeah, the original
Exactly.
personalized. Wow, that is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for walking us through this. And yeah, I learned a lot. So yeah, we'll have to finish out our first day of life